Hello, 45 Apple Charlie Papa, and today we're going to take a look at the basics that you need in which to load projectiles. Now, with the first video of this series, we went over the basics you need to reload the equipment. Now we've got all our equipment, we're ready to reload. What do we need in order to reload cartridges and get started on the reloading? Well, first thing I'm going to recommend, and I recommended it in the last book, is a good reloading manual. This manual will have all kinds of recipes in there for whatever you're trying to reload. It's got all kinds of valuable information in here. You can see here you've got dimensions of the cartridge, you've got your overall maximum overall lengths available. You've got some recipes here with some different powders, different grain bullets. So a lot of valuable information in these reloading manuals. You pick a good one up. This Lyman's a pretty decent one. It's got a lot of different calibers in which to load for, and they're a very good resource. But pick up as many reloading handbooks as you can. Another one, you've got a very basic reloading manual. Now this doesn't tell you how to reload, but it gives you information on like Hodgkin's, IMR, and Winchester powders. It also gives you some recipes on some of the more common calipers in which to reload. So this will kind of give you an idea if they've got anything new, what the powder is like, what it's kind of meant for. But pick up as many reloading manuals as you can find. The Lyman one, the big one, is a good one to start with, and then you can kind of pick up some of these manufacturer reloading manuals. You can call the manufacturers. A lot of these manuals are online. Hodgkin's is a really good place online for reloading supplies to give you some good recipes and some very, very good information. Now, when you go looking at powders and you get to the store and you see, as you can see here, you've got all kinds of different powders. What's going to run for your gun? Well, we've all got these little smartphones for the most part. And while you're there at wherever you're looking to reload, pull up the manufacturer's websites. Take a look if there's, took a look at the bullets that they've got available and the powders, and, just make sure that there is powder, bullets, recipes available for you on their websites. BE86 is a very good one from Alliant, very new powder, but they don't have a whole lot of reloading information on there for a lot of the different calibers. They've got quite a bit, but it's new powder. They haven't done all the testing and stuff on it. But let's take a look at the four major components that you're going to need. You're going to need brass. You're going to need primers, a source of ignition. You're going to need powder, the propellant that propels the bullet down the barrel. And you're going to need a projectile or a bullet. Now let's start with brass. Brass, where do you find brass? Well, you can pick it up at a lot of ranges. Some of them will sell the brass. Now there's a lot of indoor ranges out there. You can only pick up what you've shot. They don't allow you to just scoop brass up. There's some outdoor ranges on there where people just leave brass laying around, and you're more than welcome to that brass. I've got an outdoor range I go to. I pick up a lot of brass at. You may have to clean it, especially if it's at an outdoor range. Just putting it through, a 5-gallon bucket of water and maybe a little vinegar, letting it soak for a while, agitating it every once in a while, letting it dry will get the cases at least clean enough that you can reload, because you're just trying to get the like sand and dust and stuff off of these. Now you've got two different types of primers. What we're going to reload, and what the main primer that everybody here in the States reloads, is boxer primers. And boxer primers leave one little flash hole in the center. You can kind of see there on this 45, there we go, the flash hole in this. And that's what your decapping pin goes, and that's what helps you push out the primer. You do have many European cartridges, many steel case cartridges have what they call a Berdan prime, and it's kind of hard to see there. There you go. You can see the two. It's got two flash holes over on the side and a anvil in the middle. Now with the Berdan prime, the compound in the primer is pretty flat, and when you strike the primer with your firing pin, that compound hits this little anvil here, and that's what sets it off. That's what makes it ignite. On the Boxer primer, you don't have this little anvil here. That little anvil is inside the primer itself. So these steel case, not necessarily reloadable. Berdan Prime is reloadable, but it takes some special tools in which to do it. For the most part, if you see these, if they're steel, pitch them. If they're brass, just throw them in your brass recycling, because for our purposes, Berdan Prime cases are not what we want. Now, there is sometimes you may pick up some aluminum cases. Is aluminum reloadable? Well, the manufacturers tell you no, do not reload aluminum cases. I have known people who have reloaded these, but for right now, if you're just starting to get into it, just leave these alone. Don't mess with these. Use the brass. That's going to be your best bet. That's the more traditional. Brass will also hold up through multiple reloadings better than aluminum will. Aluminum, like I said, there are guys out there that do reload the aluminum cases. They're typically for like a single time use. They don't care if they lose it, but you stay away from the aluminum until you've reloaded for a while and you're comfortable with experimenting with trying to reload aluminum cases. I don't recommend it simply because the manufacturers don't recommend it, but I know there's people out there that do it. So now you've found a source of brass. You can also buy cleaned and polished brass at gun shows. A lot of guys will sell once fired brass. You can get that out online, for whatever caliber you're looking to buy. So brass wise, you don't have to worry too much about as long as it's the proper brass for the gun. Now with 45 ACP, they have started going from, instead of a large pistol primer pocket like this one is, there are a lot of the new ones take a small pistol primer. So you need to be aware that, especially with 45 ACP, that you could have both small and large pistol primers. So you're going to have to separate those out, and you can kind of tell by looking at them what's small and what's large. The other thing you're going to need is primers. Any of the commercially manufactured Boxer primers are good. Just be very careful what primers you have. Now, there's only really two sizes of primers. There's a small and a large, but that's the diameter. You get into a little bit thicker primer when you get into rifles, and a little bit thinner primer when you get into pistols. But make sure that the primer is for what you are loading. This is for small pistol, for standard pistol loads. This is not for Magnum loads. They do make Magnum pistol primers, so if you're shooting like 357 Magnum, you're going to need a Magnum pistol primer. And then you've got your rifle, large rifle primers, small rifle primers, and there are some specialty product primers in there depending on what you are reloading. 7.62x39. A lot of them will have a particular primer to use if you're reloading for that, simply because it's usually got a little bit thicker construction, made for some of the Russian guns that have a little bit stronger springs and hit the primer a little harder, because Russian military brass is known to be kind of a little harder primers. So you don't want to pierce the primer with your firing pin. So now, we've got the primers covered, but, you can get a lot of different primers. And if you have a question on what primer, a lot of the recipes in the book will have a recommendation. Hey, we tested this with Winchester primers, or we tested this with CCI primers. And they'll give you a good recommendation for what you're trying to load. Now, they, as long as you're using small pistol primers and pistol loads, they're all very similar. They will all work. But in the books, they've got specific primers because that's what they've had the success with. As for projectiles, you've got, if you get real ambitious, you can cast your own lead projectiles, and you can buy lead projectiles too. This is a nice little lead 9mm projectile. If you get real ambitious, as you get into the hobby, you can start looking at powder coating your lead projectiles. Now, why would you powder coat? Lead tends to lead the barrels a little bit if it's not quite to specs. Well, some of the harder leads won't lead as much. Some of the softer leads will. But powder coating is like putting a plastic jacket around a leaded bullet. So you've got, some powder coating. Now you've got to be careful with these too. I have found a few guns that do not like the powder coated bullets. You've got full metal jacket bullets. Now this was a full metal jacket bullet. It's a lead core, and as you can see here, the lead core has been melted out of this, and this is just what remains of the brass jacket that was around this 45 projectile. So you've got full metal jackets. That's fairly common. And then if you're trying to do some economical shooting, these, like the Berry's plated, there's Extreme out there, but these are a plated lead bullet. These are copper plated lead bullets. So these are very good for plinking, for general reloading. And then you've got, you can go to the gun shows, pick up projectiles that way. You can get these at the store. You can also, get into some of the hunting bullets. And, these can get kind of pricey as you start getting into more specialized bullets for specialized applications. You're going to want a powder funnel. Powder funnels are very handy, especially when you're measuring out your powder and you want to put this over the brass and pour the powder into the brass that you just measured. So you'll want a powder funnel. And then powders. There are so many different powders out there, so you're going to have to do a little bit of research. And like I said, I would recommend picking up the Lyman catalog. Look at, if you're going to reload for 9mm, look up the 9mm specs on there and what they have for powders that they've got load data for in the particular grain of bullet you're looking for. Now these are 40 caliber, 155 grain. These bullets weigh 155 grains. You can go all the way up to 165, 180 grain, 200 grain in the 40 caliber. And you're going to have different load, and you're going to have different powders that work better with those loads. So, it's very important. Like I said, take your cell phone with you. Get on the manufacturer's website when you're looking at powders, and make sure that there is a recipe for 155 grain plated 40 caliber bullets and what powders that they recommend. And you can get on several different websites. And if anybody comes up and asks you, hey, why are you on your phone? We tell them, I'm just getting into reloading, and I'm looking up the powders and trying to find out what powders are going to mate well with what bullets that I'm looking at. You've also got rifle powders. You've got pistol powders. So you need to know what's a pistol powder, what's a rifle powder. Some of them are marked on their rifle powder. Some are not marked. IMR is a very good one that they just come in kind of a generic package, and you don't know exactly whether they're pistol or whether they are rifle powders or shotgun powders. Now many shotgun powders can also be used as pistol powder. Red Dot is a shotgun powder, but it's also very good in pistols. So, that's one of the things you need to know. Now, when I started reloading, that's when you started getting hard time finding components, hard time finding powders. I started using auto comp powder simply because it's one of the pistol powders that I could find. A lot of the other ones were hard to find. Unique was almost impossible to find. Varget in the rifle powders was really hard to find. Now, I picked this one up. And this is why I say, grab your phone, look up load data, have some stuff notated on a piece of paper okay, I'm loading for 9mm or I'm loading for 8mm Mauser, and is there load data available? Now I picked this up, and sometimes they'll have some load data on there. Sometimes they tell you like this is well suited for 30-06. And when I picked this up, well, 30-06 is a very close match to 8mm Mauser, so you might be able to find a load out there for it. Well, I got to looking once I got this home, and 8mm Mauser has no load data for this 2700. I could not find any load data. I've got a couple other rifles I was trying to find load data for this. Come to find out, after going through Accurate Sight, the only rifle round that I am currently loading that I can use this in is 303 British. So that's why I'm telling you, especially with rifle powders, make sure that you find a powder that has recipes and load data for the cartridge that you are looking at. So, you know, when I load up for 303 Brit, I've got load data for 2700. But, you know, that's basically all that powder I'm going to use. All I'm going to use that powder for is the 303 British. So that just kind of gives you an overall of the components. Don't get scared away. You know, pick up some of the more common ones. If you can find some Unique's a good one. If you can find some Tight Group's a pretty decent one. Autocomp's decent. HS6, there's a lot of guys that use HX6. The BLC2 is fairly common in rifle. Varget is a very good one if you that's been around a long time. If you're shooting some of the more oddball calibers like the 8mm Mausers and the 7.7 Jap, that Varget's been around long enough that there's load data out there for it. So this is 45 Alpha Charlie Papa channel, and I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of the components you're going to need. In the next videos, we're going to do basic pistol reloading and some basic rifle reloading. But 45 Alpha Charlie Papa channel, and I'm out.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.